You kick in the back door, you go to the bedroom, you grab her, you drag her out, you throw her in a car, you're gone. You ain't talking about 7 minutes. We've got 21 minutes. We've got 30 minutes. We've got a longer period of time than it would take for anyone to kidnap somebody. So, again, that's telling me that might not have been what this was. It's telling me that he was targeting her for whatever reason he was targeting her, but it doesn't appear in any way to be a traditional kidnapping.
A veteran crime scene investigator is speaking out about the Nancy Guthrie case and what she is saying about the blood evidence, the suspect's behavior, and the handling of this investigation is some of the most detailed forensic analysis this case has seen publicly. Cheryl McCollum is an active crime scene investigator with a Metro Atlanta Police Department. She has worked homicides, kidnappings, and cold cases throughout her career. She has been studying the available evidence in the Nancy Guthrie disappearance.
A lot of people believe there's more than one person involved. Where are the footprints? There's no drag marks, there's no scuff marks, there's nothing that shows there was any type of fight. If you have two assailants in that home, why do you have to get physical with somebody 84 years old? You can control her without hitting her. I don't have anything right now, factually, that dictates there was more than one person.
And tonight, her conclusions are changing how investigators and the public should be reading what that front porch is actually telling us. Start with the blood, because most of the coverage of this case has treated the blood on Nancy's porch as a single piece of evidence. So Cheryl McCollum is looking at it as 4 separate pieces of evidence, and the distinction matters enormously. The first pattern she identifies is the 90-degree angle drops. These are drops that fall straight down from standing height. Several of them carry what crime scene investigators call a half-moon shape. And critically, air is visible inside the drop itself. That specific characteristic points to one source: the nose or the mouth. Nancy Guthrie was struck in the face. The blood on that porch came from a blow to the nose, the mouth, or both. The second pattern is medium to high velocity spatter. A lot of the public analysis of this footage has interpreted it as drops within drops, a secondary impact landing inside a primary drop. McCollum disagrees with that reading based on her experience. But her interpretation is that it is consistent with a cough. Nancy coughed blood. That is not a secondary impact pattern. That is a biological response to trauma that was already underway. The third pattern is a transfer print, blood that was already on someone's surface, specifically on a hand or palm pressed down onto the porch. McCollum describes the shape as resembling a Rorschach test, that folded ink butterfly shape. Someone with blood on their hand made physical contact with that porch surface. That is not airborne spatter. That is direct transfer. 2 completely different mechanisms, 2 completely different things they tell you about the sequence of events. The fourth pattern is a clean swipe, a dry surface with something bloody dragged across it in a single direction. Movement, something in motion through blood. But 4 distinct patterns, 4 distinct events. Together, they describe not a single moment of violence, but a sequence. Something happened, then something else happened, then something else, and then she was moved. Now to the question that has been dominating online discussion of this case for weeks. How many people were involved? Based strictly on the physical evidence, McCollum's position is 1 person. Not 2, not 3. 1. Here is her reasoning, and it is grounded entirely in what the crime scene shows rather than what theories say. There are no footprints in the blood on that porch. No drag marks, no scuff marks, no evidence of a physical struggle involving multiple people moving in the same direction. No second figure captured on any available camera. No backdoor footage showing 2 or 3 people crossing the yard. Nothing that physically demonstrates the presence of a second person moving through that space. If 2 people were moving an 84-year-old woman out of that house, one of them would have been walking in front of her and one behind her. People walking through blood leave prints. There are no prints. The evidence does not support multiple suspects at this stage. McCollum is not ruling it out categorically, but she is saying the physical record as it currently exists points to 1 person, and she will not go beyond what the evidence shows. She also makes a practical point that is difficult to argue with. A reward of over $1 million is sitting on the table right now. If 3 people were involved in this crime, in her experience, somebody picks up that phone. Nobody has. The silence itself, she says, is data. Now to the 41 minutes. Because this is the detail McCollum says tells you more about what this crime actually was than almost anything else in the case. The suspect appears at the front door at 1:47 in the morning. Nancy's pacemaker transmits its final signal at 2:28. 41 minutes inside that house with a woman who cannot walk 50 yards unassisted, who had removed her hearing aids and was asleep, who presented no physical threat to anyone who entered that space. McCollum's question is the right one. What was he doing for 41 minutes? A traditional kidnapping does not take 41 minutes. If you have already surveilled the property, already know the layout, already know where the bedroom is, you are inside and outside in 7 minutes. 41 minutes is not a kidnapping timeline. And 41 minutes tells you this person had something specific to do once he was inside that house. He had a purpose beyond simply taking her. Whatever was packed into that backpack, which was visibly full in the doorbell footage, he used it. He arrived prepared for something that took time. He came, in McCollum's words, mission ready. The violence is another thread she pulls directly. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old with a cardiac condition and limited mobility. She cannot defend herself. She cannot run. She cannot overpower anyone. If you enter her home in the early hours of the morning wearing a mask, you are immediately in control of that scene. There is no operational reason to strike an 84-year-old woman who cannot resist you. The fact that she was bleeding tells McCollum something specific. This person chose to be violent. That is a behavioral indicator that goes beyond what was necessary to accomplish the goal. It tells you something about who this person is that the practical facts of the crime alone do not tell you. Now to the doorbell camera footage, because McCollum's breakdown of what the suspect actually does at that front door is the most detailed public analysis of this footage that has come out, and it fundamentally changes how you read this person. The first thing he does when he reaches the door is extend his hand toward the knob. He is testing whether the door is unlocked. He did not arrive with visible tools. He did not arrive with a plan to force the front door. He came hoping it might simply be open. That one detail tells you something about his level of preparation and his level of experience. At the point of entry, he is improvising. Then he notices the camera, and what follows has stopped every expert who has viewed this footage because nobody has seen behavior like this before in a residential abduction case. He does not smash the camera. He does not pick up a rock. He walked past 100 rocks to reach that front door, and any one of them would have destroyed that camera in under 2 seconds. Instead, he reaches for the flower arrangement near the entrance. He picks flowers. He strips leaves off the stems. He breaks them. And then he attempts to arrange the broken flowers over the camera lens in a way that might obstruct the view. While he is doing this, his face remains fully visible to the camera the entire time. The camera continues recording everything. He is not eliminating the evidence. He is not neutralizing the threat. He is rearranging the decorations. The firearm he is carrying is holstered incorrectly. The holster appears to be a cheap one-size-fits-all type that does not properly fit the weapon. He has a mouth light between his teeth, and at one point, he points it at the ground as though he is searching for something he dropped. None of this is the behavior of someone with operational experience. None of it reflects practiced, deliberate, professional conduct. McCollum's clinical assessment after reviewing all of this footage is that this person is not well.
For her
Something is happening
family,
mentally
but
that
for
is
us
expressing
here
itself in his behavior at that door. And the reason every independent expert who has analyzed this footage arrives at the same reaction, that they have never seen anything like this before, is because the person they are watching is not operating from any recognizable criminal framework. He is following his own internal logic, and that logic does not correspond to anything in the existing behavioral literature on residential abductions. He is not a professional. A professional would not approach an iron front door with a secondary door behind it, knowing how long that kind of layered entry takes without tools. A professional would not spend time with flowers when rocks are available everywhere. A professional would be gone in under 10 minutes. He was there for 41. On entry, the front door showed no signs of forced entry. McCollum's read on the footage is that he tested the knob first specifically because he may have found the door unlocked on one of his earlier visits. People in that community have said doors are sometimes left open. Whether that was what he expected or whether he was simply checking, his first instinct at the door was to try the handle rather than force it. The back of the property tells a different story. Lights near the back door were damaged. That may be where he actually gained access. What the blood tells us definitively is where he exited, the front door, with Nancy. On the suspect's profile, McCollum works strictly from the evidence and is careful to note she is a crime scene investigator and not a behavioral profiler. But what she can read from the physical and visual record gives you a picture worth taking seriously. The dates he chose for his surveillance visits: January 11th, January 24th, January 31st. Every single one is a weekend. That is not coincidence. No, that is structure. It means this person has a weekday life. something that occupies him Monday through Friday and gives him his Saturdays and Sundays free for planned trips to this neighborhood. That observation alone meaningfully narrows the suspect pool. You are not looking for a drifter or a transient. You are looking for someone with a schedule, someone with a routine, someone who planned these weekend visits around whatever his regular weekly obligations are. His apparent age based on how he moves and carries himself. McCollum puts him at 30 or under. He looks young. He moves young. He does not present the physical bearing of someone in their 50s or 60s. Her read is mid to late 20s, possibly younger. The weapon appears to be a 9mm. The holster is wrong for it. A cheap generic type that an experienced firearm user would never use for a purpose like this. Someone may remember that holster being purchased. Someone may remember the gun being purchased or reported stolen. Both of those are traceable threads. His overall level of preparation. He thought extensively about how to get in. He does not appear to have thought through what to do when things go sideways. He had a plan for the beginning of this operation. He did not have a contingency for the middle or the end. That is not someone who has done this before. That is someone who has spent a lot of time thinking about this specific scenario and convinced himself he had it covered without stress testing the plan against reality. Plans that are not stress tested fall apart in the field. And when plans fall apart, people make mistakes. Those mistakes may already be sitting in the evidence record waiting to be found. Now on the investigation itself. Because McCollum has things to say here that are specific, pointed, and that the people running this case need to hear directly. The crime scene management was not what it should have been, and she is unambiguous about that. She would have established double tape immediately upon arrival. An inner perimeter sealing the actual evidence area so that nobody without a direct investigative role enters it under any circumstances, and an outer perimeter creating a clean walking track around the full scene so that supervisors, officials, and senior personnel can observe without contaminating anything inside. Now, what actually happened in the early hours of this investigation was reporters getting close enough to see blood on the porch with their own eyes. People following FBI agents down the street filming them side by side as they worked. That is not a secured crime scene. That is a publicly accessible one. And once a crime scene has been walked through by people who should not have been in it, you cannot take that back. She would have placed the media staging area as far down the road as physically possible and the command center as far in the other direction as possible. You do not want cameras documenting your investigative process in real time. You do not want reporters tracking which direction your agents are moving. And she would have been deeply conscious throughout all of it that Nancy's children and grandchildren are going to watch every piece of footage that comes out of that scene. The decision to use a long stick to visibly search manhole covers and storm drains in front of cameras is the kind of image that lands on a grieving family in a way that cannot be undone. It did not need to be done that way. Most critically, she would not have released that crime scene when they did. Full stop. She would have kept it open until she was completely satisfied that every recoverable piece of evidence had been collected. And specifically, she would have kept it sealed until the question of whether video existed had been definitively answered.
About what we have,
As it
not
turned
very
out,
healthy
video
either.
did exist.
Okay, that's fine. Not
The
healthy.
FBI found it in Google's back-end servers. Now, but that answer came after the scene was already released. That sequence cannot be undone. The evidence that was missed on the first pass required investigators to return days later. A roof-mounted camera was completely overlooked in the initial walkthrough. The doorbell footage was declared unrecoverable because Nancy did not have an active Nest subscription, only for the FBI to later pull residual imagery from Google's back-end infrastructure that should have been pursued from day one. These are not minor administrative errors. In the first 72 hours of an abduction case, those are the hours you never get back. Evidence that is not collected in that window in many cases cannot be recovered at all. Some of it degrades. Some of it gets compromised. Some of it simply becomes harder to authenticate as the timeline extends. And every hour that scene was open to people who should not have been in it, and every piece of evidence that was overlooked in the initial walkthrough represents a cost to this investigation that is difficult to fully calculate. She also addresses directly how this case should have been classified from the beginning as a homicide. Not because she believed Nancy was dead, but because the investigative protocols for a homicide are more protective of evidence, more conservative about scene release, faster to bring in specialized resources, and more aggressive about the first critical hours than a standard missing person or kidnapping response. If you work a kidnapping as a homicide and you are wrong, you have done no harm. If you work a kidnapping as a kidnapping when it is actually a homicide, you have made decisions in the first hours that cannot be reversed. Working it as a homicide from the first hour means the dogs come in faster. The FBI comes in faster. The scene stays locked down longer. The evidence gets treated with the level of protection it deserves. And then there is the press conference that has not happened. The single thing McCollum says she has been waiting to see throughout this entire investigation and has not seen once. The sheriff, the FBI, and the Guthrie family standing together at a podium as a unified team. It has not happened. The family has recorded their own videos from private locations. Law enforcement has held its own separate briefings. There has been no moment where all three parties appeared together, presenting a coordinated front to the public. And when that unified presence is absent week after week, what fills that vacuum is conspiracy theories. Theories about the family, theories about the sheriff, theories about what the FBI is hiding. None of those theories serve the investigation. None of them are fair to the family. A joint press conference does not solve the case, but it sends the message that matters most right now. We are working together. We are not working against each other. We are not hiding anything from you. That message has never been delivered once in 46 days on whether this case could go cold. McCollum is precise about what that term actually means because it has been used loosely in coverage of this case, and it deserves accuracy. A case goes cold when there are no active leads, no witnesses coming forward, and no recoverable evidence for a sustained period typically measured in years. This case does not meet that definition. DNA is still being processed in a laboratory in Florida. Neighbors are still being interviewed. The weapon in that footage may have been purchased somewhere, and purchases like that get remembered, especially when the buyer stands out. The holster may have been purchased separately, and a cheap one-size-fits-all holster on an awkwardly carried firearm is the kind of specific detail that sticks in a seller's memory. Investigative genetic genealogy is being applied to the available DNA profile in an attempt to build a family tree that traces back to a name. Active threads are being worked. This case is slow. It is not cold. Those are fundamentally different things. Now, the bottom line from one of the most forensically credible voices to speak publicly about this case is this. One person. Not two, not three. One person who came on weekends because his week was occupied with something else. Who was young, probably 30 or under. Who tested the doorknob before trying anything else. Who spent 41 minutes inside when a kidnapping takes 10. Who struck an 84-year-old woman when there was no operational reason to. Who tried to cover a camera with flowers instead of picking up a rock. Who carried a weapon in the wrong holster. Who planned the beginning of this operation carefully and did not plan the ending at all. That profile is unusual, and unusual is actually identifiable, because unusual behavior leaves an unusual trail. And somewhere in the evidence being processed right now, and in the DNA being separated from a complex mixed sample in a Florida laboratory, in the cell tower records tracking every device through that corridor on those 3 January weekends, in the retail transaction data connected to that backpack and that holster and that weapon, in the permit records from construction sites within sight of Nancy's property, in the memories of workers who moved through that neighborhood during January and have not yet been asked what they saw, somewhere in all of that is a name. The investigation has made mistakes. The scene was released too early. The evidence went to a private lab instead of Quantico. The neighborhood canvass was incomplete for over a month. The unified public front between law enforcement and family has never materialized. Those are real failures with real costs, but the case is not over. The DNA is not finished. The genealogy work is not finished. The retail traces are not finished. The phone records are not finished. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has been gone 46 days. Her family is still waiting. The investigation is still running. If you have any information at all, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. That number is 1-800-225-5324. You can submit tips online at tips.fbi.gov or reach the Pima County Sheriff's Department directly at 520-35-14900. Everything is completely anonymous. The combined reward stands at $1.2 million. One person did this. That person left a trail, and the trail is still being followed.